First tonight, our latest troubleshooter investigation takes a closer look at an issue a lot of people are talking about, but it was difficult to get people to talk about it on camera because they're afraid of reprisal. Is there a racial bias, or at least a neighborhood bias, when it comes to auto insurance rates in Louisville, even if you have a stellar driving record? That's a complaint that led us on a winding road. The law says you aren't allowed to drive in Kentucky unless you have auto insurance. How much do you pay? There are many different factors, right? The driver's age, driving record, insurance score, and even credit score. But what if you take the same family with the same driving record and the same 3 cars with the same coverage, but the only difference is where they live in Louisville? That's what I did to test out the allegation that people in the west end of Louisville are paying way more for auto insurance, more than double what people in other parts of the city pay, especially the east end. A licensed insurance agent agreed to work with us, giving me quotes by running the same family's 3 cars, currently worth $16,000, $9,000, and $3,000, but changing their addresses to put them in various zip codes around town with everything else the same. Over in the East End, in places like 40223 and 40299, the yearly insurance cost is just over $3,000. In 40217, the Schnitzelburg area, it's just over $4,000. In the South End, 40272, $4,482. But look at the West End. Zip codes like 40210, 11, and 12. The yearly insurance costs range from $6,300 to $6,600 in zip codes with median household incomes ranging from $20,000 to $27,000 a year.
It is appalling because it feels like we're making up for what they don't want to charge someone else.
Taquan Spencer Smith learned about this while insurance shopping, living in 40212.
Me and my financial advisor thought about something. Would it be any different if we were to say I lived in East Louisville versus West Louisville? So we gave an area code and address for Anchorage, and they had quoted me for 170. So when I corrected my address and gave them my actual home address, they raised it to 260.
Unfortunately, when I see these insurance numbers and these rates, I'm not surprised.
We ran our findings by attorney Sam Aguiar.
It's redlining is what it is. And when you see that your most impoverished community in Louisville has to pay 3 times what somebody in the East End would have to pay for insurance, there's something inherently wrong there. What's even worse about it is I'm talking about clients that have 30-year clean driving records, spotless, never been in an accident, but just choose to live in a zip code where they're punished for it. It's sickening.
Insurance agent Denise Bentley had the same massive rate hike happen to her.
When I moved back to Louisville, John, my insurance went up from Lexington. Nothing had changed. Everything had stayed the same except I had moved into 40211. And the insurance company said, oh, it's because of the zip code you live in. Well, what does that have to do with my history with this company or my history as a driver?
Bentley says the rate disparities she sees by neighborhood lead to insurance fraud or going uninsured.
You have limited resources and you're spending it to try to be legal in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. But when you have a choice between feeding children or keeping your light and gas bill on, you know, sometimes you make those decisions. If there's not a month that goes by as an agent where people do not call me and say, Miss Bentley, my payment's not going to clear this month because I had this happen, or I got to get back to school clothes.
More studies are showing the same thing we found. The Consumer Federation of America finding predominantly African-American neighborhoods pay 70% more on average for premiums than other areas do, and upper middle income individuals who live in black neighborhoods paid a full 194% more for car insurance on average than upper middle income individuals living in white neighborhoods. What's the reason for this? Is it crime? When we map vehicle theft and vehicle break-ins over the past 3 months in LMPD's crime database, we see a heavier proliferation of it in the West End. When we sort crime data for all of 2021, we find a West Side zip code like 40211 had more vehicle break-ins than a larger East Side zip like 40299, and 40211 had 230 motor vehicle thefts. That's 4 times more than 40299. But a State Farm insurance agent who would not go on camera tells us the rate disparity has little to do with crime. He says it has to do with the frequency and severity of claims in an area. He referred us to State Farm's public affairs specialist, who referred us to the Insurance Information Institute.
Location certainly could be used as a factor, especially if it's a very high crime neighborhood. If crime is known to happen and there's a lot of car theft, that could impact rates.
These insurance companies, when you look at their financials, they're disgusting. They make so much money. So what I've seen historically, ever since I started practicing, is that insurance companies are going to target certain members and dynamics within the community, and it's always people of color. Always. There's always a stereotype and assumption that's being made.
Race and religion are never used in rates for insurance. That's illegal. And any credible agent or insurance company isn't going to use that. And if someone believes that to be true, they need to file a complaint with their insurance company, and they need to contact their state insurance department and have that looked into.
It doesn't matter what your insurance score is. It doesn't matter what your driving record is. It doesn't matter the length you've been driving. It's just that zip code forces you to pay 3 to 4 times more than anyone else. And I still think it's a way for them to get around redlining.
Now, we explained our findings to the Kentucky Department of Insurance. They responded in an email, quote, "This is not a Louisville-specific situation, as geographic location is a factor in figuring auto insurance rates. For instance, auto insurance rates are traditionally the highest in eastern Kentucky because of theft rates, lack of body shops, and road condition."
Tonight to a Wave News troubleshooter investigation of how where you live in Louisville has a great deal to do with what you pay in auto insurance premiums. And John, you have a huge development in your story tonight.
Yeah, it's starting to pick up steam, Myra. The Consumer Federation of America saw our first report and drafted and sent a 5-page letter this week to the Kentucky Department of Insurance requesting they take action. And prompted by our story, they've done more research that shows yet another example of why your auto insurance rate has less to do than you might imagine with your driving record or claim history. When Taquan Spencer Smith was shopping for car insurance, with all the other factors the same, and listed an East Louisville address, then his own West Louisville address, he was shocked at the difference.
It is appalling because it feels like we're making up for what they don't want to charge someone else.
We did the same kind of thing on a larger scale. We took the same family with the same driving record and the same 3 cars with the same coverage and had a licensed insurance agent give us auto insurance quotes when the only thing we changed was the family's address to put them in various zip codes around Louisville. Over in the East End, in places like 40223 and 40299, the yearly insurance cost is just over $3,000. In 40217, the Schnitzelburg area, it's just over $4,000. In the South End, 40272, $4,482. But in the West End, zip codes like 40210, 11, and 12, the yearly insurance costs were more than double the East End, ranging from $6,300 to $6,600 in zip codes with median household incomes ranging from $20,000 to $27,000 a year.
It's a very prime example of unfair discrimination. And that's why we're calling on the Kentucky Department of Insurance to, first off, investigate what's going on.
The Consumer Federation of America saw our report and sent this 5-page letter to the state insurance department urging an investigation of pricing practices. Researchers there like Michael DeLong took a longer look at Kentucky.
We've noted that as the percentage of Black consumers in a neighborhood goes up, unfortunately, so do the auto insurance premiums. So racism is pretty widespread.
In addition to what the CFA calls territorial price discrimination, it also found your credit history may have more to do with what you pay than your driving history.
We did our own analysis of some of the zip codes you mentioned, the West End and the East End.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we found that drivers in the West End with poor credit, in Kentucky, someone with a good driving record but poor credit is actually paying a higher premium on average than a Kentucky driver with excellent credit but a drunk driving conviction. That makes no sense. That's not accurate. That's un-American. It's harmful. And we think that auto insurers should stop trying to discriminate against poor consumers and actually charge people based on their driving records.
Look at the chart they included in their letter to the state insurance department. Whether you're in the East End or West End, the difference in auto insurance premiums between people with excellent credit versus poor credit is substantial. In the West End zip codes of 40210 and 12, it's 2.5 times more. What is the why? What have you guys been able to gather? Why do they do this?
We think auto insurers are using these factors, someone's neighborhood, zip code, credit history, as proxies for income and indirectly for race. They're discriminating against poorer consumers in order to try and give favors to the wealthier consumers that have more disposable income so they can buy additional policies.
While we couldn't get an answer from insurance companies, some agents have suggested the zip code disparity has to do with crime. Our analysis of LMPD crime data found a heavier proliferation of vehicle theft and vehicle break-ins in the West End.
Crime may play a role, but it's not enough, and it doesn't account for like the very big premium increases that we've seen.
Their letter to the state insurance department says in their study of every zip code in America, CFA found that the Louisville core-based statistical area has the third most severe disparities in auto insurance premiums between communities that are predominantly white and those that are predominantly black. And they cite a federal insurance office study that shows over 400,000 Kentucky residents live in 99 zip codes where auto insurance is unaffordable, including the West End communities described in the Wave 3 report.
The horrible thing about this is that the Kentucky is requiring people to purchase auto insurance, but the Kentucky Department isn't doing its job to make sure that this is affordable, and it needs to step up and do its job.
So on Monday, when that letter was sent, we requested an interview with the state insurance department about this, or a comment responding to that CFA letter. They said they would get back to us on it, and we haven't received a reply yet. We'll let you know what they say when we get it. If you have a problem or a concern that you think should be addressed by the Wave troubleshooters, visit wave3.com to submit a tip, and you can also scan the QR code you see there on the bottom left corner of your screen.
Still to come here.